So, what is the No Child Left Behind Act? This is an act that was passed by the Bush administration in the early 2000s. This is a revision of the ESEA, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, that was previously published by Lyndon B. Johnson in 1965. So, what are the components of the No Child Left Behind Act? There are five things that I'm going to hit on that really are the focus of the No Child Left Behind Act. Though there are little things here and there that are that could be mentioned, but these five things affected schools greatly. The first one being adequate yearly progress. These are benchmark goals that schools have to meet, otherwise they will be sanctioned. The second being standardized testing. This is a test that all students of every grade have to take, and it is for everybody. Doesn't matter your background, if you're a minority, a different race, religion, everybody has the same test that is timed. This can be a great stressor for the students. Thirdly, the component that affected teachers greatly was that they needed higher quality teachers in schools. So this caused a lot of teachers to have issues because they wouldn't have those qualifications that the No Child Left Behind Act put on schools. And so a lot of teachers had to be let go or relocated. And lastly, the school standings based on their test scores of different minorities and things like that were posted publicly for the first time ever. And so schools had to post these online so people who were moving into the area would know what schools had the best standardized testing scores, best grade point average based on minorities and things like that. So the intended goals were to help disabled, underprivileged, and minority students. These three groups were hurting greatly in the early 2000s education-wise, and so they were being focused on more. Secondly, it was to make the schools accountable for the students that were failing. These students that were failing were just being failed, and they kept getting held back, and there was no responsibility. No one would take that responsibility, though it is the school's fault. This is the first time that they were being held accountable for those students. And lastly, it was to get qualified teachers to come into schools and change the whole perspective of education altogether. From the perspective of the school, so there was this huge circle of failure that started after the No Child Left Behind Act was published. So if a school didn't meet their benchmark goals, then they would get sanctioned. But because of these sanctions, they wouldn't meet their goals the next year, so then they would get sanctioned. And it was just this long process of failure for a lot of schools, and a lot of schools were shut down because of it. They were lacking in teachers because of the stricter process to become a teacher, and there was a shift of intentions from teaching to learn to teaching to the test, and I'll speak about that in a little bit. The perspective of the students is one that has pros and cons, so this is where a lot of the discretion, you can use your own discretion and see if you are pro or against No Child Left Behind. But the perspective of the students, so minority, disabled, and underprivileged students were being focused on more. This is so great because they had never been focused on before. But on the turnaround, this meant that the good students, people who were not struggling, were not getting that attention that they were used to. So it was kind of a catch-22. There needed to be something that gave attention to all students, not just the ones that were really struggling. And then the last component of the perspective of the student was that they were taking these standardized tests, and this was their scope of ability, that they would maybe be good in the classroom, but they might have ADHD, they might have some learning disability, and they might just have really bad test anxiety. And so this was being used as a scope of their smartness rather how they did in the classroom. And so this hurt students greatly. From the perspective of the teacher, the teachers were the ones that were greatly affected by the No Child Left Behind Act. This took away their creativity with their curriculum. This took away why they were teaching. So they weren't teaching for the ability of these people to learn and to apply it to their lives. They were teaching so they would be able to take this test and have all these different test tips and things like that. And it really made the students struggle, and it took away the teacher's creativity, which made a lot of teachers not really want to be teachers anymore. And it also was a problem because teachers were being relocated based on needs. So a teacher might be in a place like Hattiesburg in a really good school system, and then might be moved to the Delta because it wasn't a great school system and the teachers were needed over there. So they were relocated without any consent, and so this was a problem with them. Overall, the No Child Left Behind Act had many pros and cons. A lot of people choose to be against it, but there are some pros that I had not seen previous to my research. I appreciate this opportunity, and I really enjoyed this project. Thank you for watching.